Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Was Son of Azazel movie. Before we start, please go support Alessandro Gonzalez 54 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. Born between the love affair of a fallen angel and a human, Issei, who will soon become the new leader of the fallen angels, will have many challenges to face before he can fulfill that promise. Prologue. In the middle of the battlefield, there was a girl with blonde hair who was kneeling with several wounds all over her body while she looked in front of her at the number of corpses scattered everywhere. Clank! It was the sound that could still be heard, in the middle of that field full of dead people. Clank! Clank! The metallic sound was heard getting closer and closer, where in the middle of the battle cape two people could be seen, between the ages of 24 and 25 respectively. One had short black hair, and his right eye shone brightly golden, while the other had silver hair and brown eyes. Both of them had very beautiful swords in their hands. They launched a horizontal cut. The black-haired boy easily blocked the blow, then kicked the silver-haired boy in the abdomen, making him retreat. Falling to his knees, he spat out blood, while using his sword as a support, and with his free hand he covered his mouth, and tried to breathe. As the silver-haired man caught his breath, he quickly looked up and saw the black-haired man in front of him, who was also on his knees, breathing the same way. Standing up like the black-haired man while placing his sword in front of him like the black-haired man, he also placed it in front of him, and was about to throw it at each other. The place began to shake, to the surprise of both opponents and the people who were still alive. The tremors in the place began to crack the ground below. The more the place moved, a mountain was forming right in front of both opponents. Suddenly something was emerging from there. Something dark. As the rocks fell to the ground, some green eyes appeared. The mountain began to grow larger and larger when from within emerged two enormous, shiny black wings. Ruair! From the rubble emerged a large black dragon, green eyes and two large wings. Its chest was covered in a strange dark blue light. Huge horns protruded from its head. Its green eyes pointed directly at the duo that was fighting. Then the light blue light began to appear just below its neck. Both individuals opened their eyes in surprise, but it was too late. The enormous dragon shot a powerful beam from its mouth, right where they both were. A huge explosion occurred on the spot, sweeping away everything in its path while the surviving people screamed and flew away, as did the bodies. What remained of the battlefield was a desolate place, littered with dead everywhere, a few wounded lying on the ground, while in some rubble, they were moving, and then a hand came out into the air, and cleared the rocks from the place, revealing the same black-haired woman, who had several wounds all over her body. As he looked at the entire battlefield, filled with bodies everywhere, he simply stepped out of the rubble. Path. He fell to the ground, while writhing in pain. His clothes were torn and he had a few cuts around him, but that didn't stop him from barely standing up, while blood flowed from his forehead. Taking a few steps forward, he sat on a rock. While he watched the dark sky, breathing in a relaxed manner, he simply watched the destroyed place, while a small smile formed on his face. Issei/Chan/Iase/Naya/Kuoh. Several female screams had been heard around the battlefield, where the black-haired man raised his gaze a little, and right there, he saw a group of girls, a redhead, one with silver hair, two black-haired girls, two with white hair, two blondes, one with purple hair, and two brown-haired girls. Girls, said the black-haired man with difficulty. All the girls simply approached to kneel around the black-haired man, while each one took a part of him. I see, Issei Naya, Issei Senpai, Issei Kuoh, I-chan. Each of them smiled as tears came out of their eyes, as they looked at the black-haired man, while two brunettes, one with long hair and green eyes, approached and knelt down to take his cheek. You're an idiot, while she gave him a kiss on the lips and then stood up, and the other brunette grabbed his cheeks and repeated the same action. I love you, she said while crying. The black-haired man only looked at them for a few minutes and then spoke. Me too, as she closed her fists. I love you, girls. And in that body began to disappear into particles of light, while the girls did not stop crying in silence. Slowly opening his eyes, he found a black-haired man of about 19 years of age lying in his bed, while next to him were three girls hugging him. Looking up at the ceiling, the black-haired boy simply sits on the bed while staring straight ahead. I-chan, what are you doing awake? The black-haired man simply turns his face to see a beautiful blonde with light blue eyes, who looked at him in a worried way. The black-haired man just sighs. It's nothing, Lavinia. It was just a bad dream. Go back to sleep. Yes, he said while giving her a kiss on her lips while the blonde also reciprocates the kiss. Okay, don't you want to talk about it? Lavinia asked again. The black-haired man denies it back, while the blonde simply lies down, not very convinced, on the bed, while the black-haired man simply looks at the ceiling. What was that dream? Chapter 1. Coming out of a brothel, he was a tall, thin man with black hair, with a blonde streak, wearing a red jacket, black pants and boots. The night was cold, but he simply put his hands in his pockets and began to walk through the city very calmly. His walk was quiet and without any problem. I came to a store that had a sign above it that said, "Open 24 hours a day." Upon entering the store, the doors made a noise, and he just started walking around looking for something to do. I arrived at the place where the drinks were, and I looked for something to drink. I was wondering if grabbing a bottle of whiskey or having something simple like a beer didn't sound bad at all, so I grabbed the beer and walked to get in line and wait there for a few minutes. In front of him was a woman with long brown hair. She had a huge figure, a big butt. He looked sideways at the body of the woman in front of him. Forward, the man who was serving shouted. At that the woman simply walked forward and began to hand him the products she bought, and there he saw her beautiful dark brown eyes, a pretty face, and she seemed to be about 26 years old with a large bust at the same time. He was stunned for a few moments until someone called him, and he simply walked over and then handed over what he had bought. Going outside, he wanted to see where that woman was, but she was no longer there. It seemed strange to him, so he simply observed the place until she left there. Right now, the same man arrived at what looked like an office filled with papers all over the place. He just sighed and walked to the chair in front where he leaned back and then placed his feet on the table, throwing several papers, and took out the bottle and began to drink it. His thoughts wandered over the mysterious girl he saw today. He wasn't going to lie. The girl was beautiful in every word. He felt attracted, and was curious about who she was, what her strange name was for being interested in someone. Could it be that he was in love? That would be impossible. True, of course she was pretty and cute, but was it true that she fell in love? That Arya didn't know how to deal with these issues, much less how the hell to maintain a relationship. There were many things he had to think about, but then he remembered an old friend of his. A smile curved his lips, and then he made a magic circle appear in his ear. "Hello, Azazel, what happened?" A male voice spoke from the other side. Azazel simply settled himself in the chair and spoke. "Hey, how have you been, Barakiel? I just called to ask you for a favor." "MMH? What kind of favor?" "If it's back to me covering for you so you can escape again and not have to do the paperwork, forget it." No. Nothing like that, Barakiel. How do you think I'm going to do that?" he said, somewhat offended. "Do you want me to make a list of all the favors I did for you?" Barakiel asked from the other side. "No, better not leave it like that. But can you help me, yes or no?" Azazel asked again, hoping that Barakiel would accept, but then he heard a sigh from the other side of the line. "Tell me why you want my help." "Well, you see, I know it sounds strange, but how do you know you're in love?" When that question was asked, there was a great silence in the place, and after a few minutes there was no response. "Barakiel, are you still there?" Yeah, sorry, I thought you said something about being in love." "Yes, I said it," and once again silence ruled. "Oh. Wow, this is definitely strange," commented Barakiel from the other side. "Well, will you help me or not? And why me? Wasn't there someone better than me on these topics, like Penemu and Shimasai? Because of the three of us, you are the only one who has a family, so that's why I'm asking you," he responded as if it were the most normal thing in the world, to which Barakiel simply sighed and spoke. "I'll help you fine." And with that said, Barakiel explained to him what he knows love is, or what he himself experienced. 3 months later. 3 months had already passed since Azazel and Barakiel spoke, at which point Azazel began to go out more and more often, going to the city where he had seen that woman. "At first I couldn't find anything, but I still searched and searched for her. Then one day on another of her getaways I had found her by mere chance in the city, where Azazel simply began to talk to her, although at first the girl was somewhat skeptical, thinking that little by little they would get to know each other more and more. In the second month, Azazel had invited her on a date where they both went to a luxury restaurant. Obviously Azazel paid for everything, and where they both had a lot of fun. Then in the second month, both could be said to be true friends, although Azazel wants to know if he really had feelings for her. By the third month, Azazel managed to discover that he did have feelings for her, Although it was only 3 months, they both seemed to feel the same. They were jealous of each other. Sometimes they seemed to be more of a couple than friends, until finally they both declared themselves. Well, she declared herself. Of course, this raised suspicions among his companions, including Penemu and Shimasai, 2 great friends of Azazel, who one day managed to find Azazel with his now partner, to the surprise of both. 9 months later. Around 9 months later, Azazel seemed to be the happiest man in the world, obviously leaving everything behind, except his job, which he was forced to do by Penemu and his now wife, both of whom you could say got along well the day they met. Penemu and Mickey both had a great similarity in their personalities. This made them both become great friends, and Azazel suffered several consequences. Although Mickey had found out that Azazel was a fallen angel, obviously the first thing was a surprise, but even so she was in love with him. Around the 4th month that they were dating, Mickey had become pregnant, which surprised Azazel, who was truly happy. But that was because he had to take care of his wife twice as much, which was not easy to take care of a pregnant woman. Something that she learned since the answers changed her mood, especially her anxiety and her tastes for food, had to keep her well. 9 months had passed, and now Azazel was walking from one side to the other, while Penemu was sitting alone on one side of the hall. On the other side were Shimasai, Barakil, and finally Kokabeel. Azazel was nervous, very nervous, so he didn't know what to do. Could he be a good father? Was what he asked himself over and over again. Damn you, Azazel, stay still, you make me nervous, Penemu shouted, making Azazel look at her for a few moments, and he sat down. But that didn't change his nerves. Then the door opened, and the doctor came out right there. Doctor, how are my wife and son? Quickly Azazel began to bombard the doctor, who couldn't say anything, since Azazel wouldn't stop talking until Penemu hit him hard on the head, slamming him into the floor. After that, the doctor explained that his wife and son were fine and that he could go see his son. Obviously Azazel flew away, and when he arrived at the room where his wife was, she was breastfeeding her son. Azazel, she said with a smile, and Azazel simply walks over to stand next to his wife. It's beautiful, he commented, looking at his son. What shall we call it? Mickey asked, and Azazel takes the baby and begins to carry him, while watching the child sleeping peacefully. What do you think, Issei? He commented, to which Mickey smiled and spoke. I like it a lot, Issei. And after that she fell asleep. Then she saw how the door opened and Barakil, Shimasai, and Penemu entered, who saw Azazel carrying the baby. This brought a smile to everyone, which Azazel simply sighed. Issei, they are your uncles and they will teach you a lot so that you learn everything about the fallen angels, he commented with a smile, seeing his son's happy mind. Chapter 2. Boom! A huge explosion had occurred in a laboratory, where a door suddenly opened and a completely furious woman entered. Azazel, what the hell are you doing? The one who screamed was none other than Penemu, whose mother was upset by what she was seeing. Oh, hello Penemu, what are you doing here? Said Azazel, who was coming out from under some rubble. Tell me something, Azazel, have you seen Issei-chan? I just can't find him. For further training, Penemu said with his arms crossed, waiting for Azazel's answer. Oh well, I have no idea where he's gone, Azazel said nervously, who was trembling slightly, something that Penemu noticed. Azazel, tell me something, where is Issei-chan? I spoke threateningly, Penemu said, while Azazel began to sweat cold. And Penemu? And in that, Azazel's body had suddenly paralyzed, while from some rubble came out an 8-year-old Issei, where what was most noticeable was that he was all dirty, and his clothes were destroyed. Azazel, tell me what you were doing to Issei-chan, Penemu said as a strange aura surrounded her, turning the fallen man pale, who quickly looked for an excuse. Wait, Penemu, I didn't know Issei was here. He quickly defended himself, where Penemu looked at Issei, waiting for an answer. On Issei's part, he simply saw Penemu, who was looking at him, and then saw his father, who was simply begging him not to say anything. For a moment Issei's lips curved into a small, somewhat bad smile, which was noticed by Azazel and not by Penemu. Who? And Penemu, Odo-san. She said she wanted to experiment on me. And then she told me she would teach me how to please a girl. Issei quickly went to where Penemu was and jumped where Penemu hugged him, while he was leaning on her enormous breasts. For Azazel's part, his jaw was open at what he had just heard from his own son. Yeah, Issei-chan, why don't you go and play with Rainier-chan, who is waiting for you? while you let me talk about certain topics with Azazel, yeah? She told him with a smile that meant only one thing to Azazel, who was about to run. Hey, Aunt Penemu. At that, Penemu takes him out of her arms, and he began to walk towards the door, where he turned around and saw that Penemu was smiling at him gently. While then he looked at his father, who was asking him for help. Issei smiled maliciously at his father, who simply stood frozen, and then looked at his aunt. I'm leaving, Aunt Penemu, and goodbye, Oto-san. And when he said the word Oto-san, Azazel had heard the great hint of evil that was in those words. I got that from my mother, Azazel thought, seeing how his son had great malice, just like his mother. Azazel. Suddenly, Penemu's voice made everyone in Azazel's column shiver. He looked at Penemu, who had a whip in his hands, and looked at him with a tender and beautiful smile. Dolpi Penemu? Azazel said nervously, as he saw how Penemu was looking at him threateningly, and she began to approach him little by little. Tell me something, Azazel. Why were you teaching that to Issei-chan? There was no shine in Penemu's eyes, on the face of the cadre, who simply waited for Azazel's response, who only limited himself to turning pale. Oops. It came out of Azazel's lips, who after that, Penemu's aura rose drastically, and it was the scream that was heard throughout Gregory, while elsewhere Issei could be seen playing with a girl of his same age, and then hearing his father scream. Did Azazel bother Penemu-sama again? The girl said, looking at Issei, who simply shrugs. Who knows, Reincarnation, you already know what old ABC is like. Issei responded to the girl, who simply let him pass as well, and they both continued playing. They played for about half an hour, and then Penemu arrived, accompanied by Betrayal, who had a girl almost the same age as the brown-haired boy, and Reincarnation at his side. I see you're having fun, guys. There's someone who wants to meet you, Penemu said. We're both infants. They turned around, and there they saw Betrayal, along with the girl, who quickly hid behind her father. Hi, I'm Issei. What's your name? Said Issei, who approached the shy girl, who simply looked at her father, who nodded, and she spoke again. I am Akino, said in a low voice the now known as Akino, while Issei just smiles. Nice to meet you, Akino-chan. I'm Issei, and the one over there is Reincarnation, he said while pointing to the black-haired man, who also introduced himself, and then the brown-haired man took her hand, to Akino's surprise. Come on, let's play. And after that he dragged her to play with Reincarnation, where the three children were having a lot of fun, while the adults just watched all this. It had been about a year where Issei, Akino, and Reincarnation had become very good friends, where the trio always spent time together playing, although sometimes these last two became much more attached to the black-haired man, something that was noticed by Penemu, Betrayal, and finally Azazel, who was simply proud that his son was quite a gentleman with women, and Betrayal, well, let's just say he didn't take it very well. Issei had met Akino's mother, and her cousin Suzaku Himejima, who, although they rarely spoke, got along, although several very different features were noticeable. Time flew by where Issei, along with Akino and Reincarnation, lived training and going to Gregory's school, where the trio had never separated. After several months, when the black-haired boy turned 9 years old, the following month his father Azazel had brought a girl with silver hair. This girl's name was Valentina Lucifer, Femme Valley, and she was a demon. Although the girl was initially tough with everyone, and simply lived trained, it was not until she met a human named Lavinia Rennie, and the Slashdog team, and she began to be a more open person where she interacted more with people, and then she became Akino's best friend along with Reincarnation, where the trio had a certain rivalry for the attention of the black-haired man, who didn't know why Valentina had radically changed her personality with him. But one day a tragic accident occurred, where Akino's mother had died at the hands of her own clan, where Akino had escaped. To say that Issei was not furious was an understatement. He was upset. He wanted to go and finish off the clan, but it was Betrayal who mercilessly murdered everyone who attacked that night. After that, Issei's personality changed a bit, and he became a little more relaxed like his father, but unlike Azazel, Issei was more likely to act quickly if something would bring problems to all of Gregory. He met the Slashdog team. Tobio was the leader, and the black-haired man became great friends with him. He also met Jean, Natsum, Koki, and C, and finally, the magician Lavinia Rennie, who was Valentina's best friend, to the point that they were considered sisters. Several years have passed, and right now Issei was already 15 years old, where his height grew considerably. He was thin but had a great physical build. Right now he was fighting with a person who was wearing a white-colored armor with 2 huge blue wings on his back. who launched himself towards Issei at great speed, trying to connect his fist to Issei's face, who smiled and jumped into the air where he took out 2 large-barreled, black magnums, and he began to shoot. Quickly falling to his feet, he turned around and with his weapon in his left hand he pointed to the sky and the other where the armor was, who quickly launched several magical powers towards him. Pulling the trigger of his weapon, bullets came out of the barrels, and as if in slow motion, the bullet that was aimed at the sky had exploded, generating an enormous white light that covered the entire place, while the other bullet hit one of the many magic circles, and then several explosions arose in the place, where the white-colored armor was in the sky flying while I was trying to regain vision. "TSK, where has he gone now?" I hear his voice from the helmet of the armor, and as if by instinct, she turned around and spun, dodging several shots from the air. She looked up at the sky and saw Issei, who had his wings spread out. "Kuoh almost hit you," Issei said mockingly as he pointed his guns at the white armor again. The white armor did not respond, and then an aura began to surround the body where the black hair was. He simply pulled the triggers and the bullets shot out towards the armor, who moving at a divine speed is dodging the bullets, who for him or her passed slowly and extending his or her left hand, launched a strong blow that hit Issei right in the abdomen. Spitting saliva, Issei dropped his guns only to receive a strong kick, which sent him crashing into the ground. A small smoke screen had been generated where the white armor descended to the ground and simply watched the place where Issei had fallen. "Oh damn, that hit really hurt." From the smoke screen the voice of Issei had been heard. When the curtain had disappeared the black hair could be seen standing, who had all his clothes dirty, while he was dusting himself, and then he rearranged his black hair. He looked directly at the white armor, who was looking at him, smiling amusedly. He extended his hand to the side. Opening his hands, a magic circle was formed on the ground, from where a sword that was tied in chains began to emerge. It was a katana, where the black-haired man takes the katana by the handle, and in that the chains quickly began to cover Issei's entire right arm. "Okay, let's go, for the last round." And with a smile on his face he began to release his aura, being echoed by the white armor. The ground where they both stood made a crunching sound, and then they both moved at great speed towards each other, and they collided. The white armor collided his fists with the entire edge of the sword, but the sword did not manage to do much damage, where both began to give a series of blows to each other, but neither was taking any advantage. Smiling amusedly, Issei kicked the armor's abdomen, who took a few steps back, and in that the katana gave a deep blue glow where Issei with his right hand extended to the side and holding it with one hand. Mujits, and then he slashed forward, where a great energy came out of the katana in the form of a cut that went directly towards where the white armor was, who reacted in time and jumped, but the black-haired man used his technique again. Mujits. Where you see the white armor, he put his arm forward, creating a small exposure. But that didn't stop him, and when he was right in front of Issei he threw a right punch towards Issei, who simply ran his face to the side where his fist passed by his face. To the surprise of the white armor, he received an attack in his abdomen that was breaking his armor completely, revealing a beautiful girl with silver hair. Falling to the ground, he was quickly going to stand up, but then he felt something sharp on his neck, and raising her gaze there she saw Issei, who had already defeated her. "You lost, Valentina," said Issei, who simply placed his katana on the ground where the chains that were in his hands quickly came out of his arm and joined the katana, where Issei then extends his hand, being accepted by Valentina, who stands up and then dusts off her clothes. "If you look at all this mess we made," sighing, Issei said, looking at the whole place completely destroyed. It came out of the girl's lips. "Well, Valentina, you lost, now you have to fulfill the bet we made, ha ha ha," Issei said, while Valentina blushes and looks away. "Idiot." Letting out a murmur she said, and then looked at Issei. "Foo, okay, I'll fulfill my part of the bet," she said, embarrassed, while Issei just laughs. "I see that they are fun, huh?" a male voice said, where both the silver-haired woman and the black-haired man turned around and saw a man with black hair and a blonde streak who was looking at him amusedly. "Azazel, old?" they said in unison, both teenagers, seeing nothing more and nothing less than Azazel, leader of the fallen angels. Chapter 3. Walking by Gregory, Issei, who had a calm expression on his face. Like his father, Issei was a freak of the sacred gears that his grandfather, the biblical god, created. Sighing, "Where is she?" the black-haired man said to himself. At that moment his vision had darkened, where he felt like someone had climbed on top of him. "Who am I?" a female voice said in a funny way. Angela? Issei replied. No, again she said. Yuki, he said again, but then he felt a small pinch on his nose. Okay, can I have a clue? He asked. It's okay, she answered quickly. I'm the person who was with you, since you were a child. Besides being your one-chan, she said in a fun way. Oh, now you're mine, Issei said, then regained his sight and turned around to see a woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. And she was also pouting. Oh, you're Lavinia, he said, disappointed. You're bad, I-chan, she complained with a pout. Sorry, there are so many that I don't even remember the names, he responded with a smile. Then received a punch in the abdomen. Ugh, I admit I deserve it, while he had his hands on his stomach, courtesy of Lavinia. Well, tell me what you're doing around here, although it's strange that I don't see you with Rainier or Valentina, she commented while looking behind Issei. Ah, well, Valentina, she left. She had to do a mission, and well, Rainier was called by Gabriel to do something that I don't know, he said nonchalantly while bowing his shoulders. And how have you been, Lavinia? And Tobio? Toby is at the bar, like the rest of the team. And well, you know, I was bored and wanted to go out for a walk for a while, she said while looking at Issei. The black-haired man smiled at this statement, and then, I see, come on, let's have fun out there, before Penemu finds me and forces me to bathe with her. A small current passed over her back. Ai-chan, are you okay? Lavinia asked worriedly, looking at Issei. Huh? If I'm okay, let's go, Issei said as he started walking, followed by Lavinia. There she was watching the sunset on top of a mountain. She had a bored look while the wind passed around her face and slowly moved her silver hair. What are you thinking about, Valentina? A thick, deep voice said in the girl's mind. Albion, she said, I thought you were sleeping. I see, was the woman's short response. You're really thinking about how to tell him what you're going to do? The woman remained silent for a few moments, then moved her hand to her arm. Yeah. Once again, silence had taken over the place where the white dragon simply left her there waiting for her to clarify her doubts. Valentina Levon Lucifer, she is the great-granddaughter of the original Lucifer. When she was born, she was not born in the best way, since her mother had her by force because her father had played with her. The reason was so that Lucifer's blood was still legacy. But she was a mere mistake because she was born with the Longinus-type sacred gears. Her life was one of abuse and suffering from her father. But she had a light, and it was her mother, the only person who truly loved her and wanted her. Despite being forced to have her, she helped her with what she could, as did Albion. Then appeared that person that she hates the most in her life, her grandmother, Lilith Levon Lucifer. She was the woman who killed her own son, and then she and her mother were locked in a dungeon for months, until later she had enough power and managed to get out of there, escaping with her mother far away. But she knew she had to do something. She didn't want to get her mother into any more trouble, so she made the hardest decision she had to make, and that was to erase all the memories they had, and make her have a truly happy life and have children with the person she loves the most. Something that really hurt her was that after a few months she had met Azazel, and then she was cared for by him, and trained by him as well. But she wasn't the only one. She met several more people who helped her. Her older brother Tobio and her sister Lavinia, 2 humans with sacred gears. And then there were also Penemu, Barakiel, Shimasai Rionair, Aquino, and finally there was him. At first she thought Issei was a perverted idiot, because she saw him bathe more than once with Penemu, and saw how he enjoyed being on her huge breasts with a perverted face. But then you saw how he was actually an exemplary leader, one that you would follow into battle without hesitation to give your life. He was smart, and above all he cared a lot about his friends. But what really endeared her to Issei was that smile, that damned smile that had captivated her, apart from being sexy and handsome. And although she always denies that she doesn't like being with him, she actually likes it because she can talk to him calmly, and without having any problems, just like with the others. Although it bothered him a little that he was always surrounded by beautiful women, especially his friends, and certain Nikomata and magicians, he was special. Letting out a sigh, she spread her wings and flew away from there, right away. He had already arrived home. He was exhausted. He had forgotten what Lavinia was really like, and now he was literally dead. Hello, Issei-kun. Hearing the voice, Issei quickly stood up and saw in front of him. He was wearing normal clothes, and on top of him was carrying a kitchen baton. Seeing this, curious Issei decided to ask, "Auntie? What are you doing in my house?" Issei asked, looking at the woman. "Well, my house was simply far away, and well, I decided to come here and sleep with you today like when we were children, he responded relaxedly. Letting out a sigh, he brought his fingers to the tip of her nose. He wasn't upset, in fact she had always been like that with him since they were children. She was always on top of him, and she took care of him and pampered him. They even bathed together until now. He didn't know if Penemia had feelings for him, but he sees her as his aunt, not with other eyes. Although he didn't deny that she was extremely beautiful and gorgeous, it was a problem. Even though he was a child, it didn't bother him that she bathed with him. But now it was different, and he couldn't deny that more than once. He wanted to have sex with her in the shower, seeing her naked body as her grandfather God brought her. He always had those thoughts. What was God thinking of creating such an atomic bomb, just like his Aunt Gabriel, the reason why his father fell? Okay, you can stay today, he replied while relaxing a little. I will sleep on the sofa today. You can use my bed. When he was about to go to his room to get the sheets, someone takes him by the arm. Wait a bit, Issei-kun. Why don't we sleep together like when you were a child and slept on my breasts? She said while Issei simply blushed a little from embarrassment. Damn, thought the black-haired one. Are you sure? Asked the, to which Penemia nodded, and Issei let out a sigh and then put on a small forced smile. It's okay, he said as he entered, smiling happily, and then dragged him to the kitchen. Okay, let's eat dinner. It should be ready by now, she said while Issei simply looked at Penemia's butt. Grandpa, what would you say right now? Issei thought, imagining what his grandmother would say if she saw how he looked at Penemia. Chapter 4. Well, this is something new. A teenager would say sitting around a table full of papers. What? Am I doing something wrong? A man with black hair and blonde streaks would say, signing some papers. The black-haired boy only remained silent for a few moments, and then opened his mouth. Who are you and what did you do with my father? The boy asked doubtfully, watching the man working. For his part, the man only closed his eyes slightly while a mark of his vein was noticed, and then he let out a few murmurs. Insolent brats no longer respect their elders. He quickly shook his head and looked at the teenager in front of him. Is it so strange that I signed the paperwork? The man asked. You have no idea, Pa. Leaving that aside, Issei. The man quickly became serious and looked at Issei, who instantly knew something was wrong. If his father would get into that state. Is it happening now? It's Kuoh. I have a report from one of my spies that Kuoh stole the fragments of the Excalibur. And he's heading towards Kuoh. With that information, the teenager's eyes widened in surprise at the information. What does that idiot do? He doesn't know he's capable of provoking a war against the demons and the angels. It was a valid point. During the great biblical faction war several millennia ago, it was a complete massacre. However, of the three factions, the ones who suffered the most losses were the fallen angels. This forced them to withdraw from that war. But it wasn't just the fallen who suffered. The demons, like angels from heaven, also suffered, due to the interference of the two celestial dragons, who managed to make not only the three races unite to fight the two celestial dragons. Several gods from different pantheons also joined together to stop the great threat. That battle not only caused the factions to be completely depleted of people, it also resulted in the death of several gods. Both minor gods and the highest-ranking gods who died in that battle. They were Elohim, Belinus and Tyrannis from Celtic mythology, Horus and Osiris from Egyptian mythology, and the main leadership positions of their Egyptian mythology. Tlaloc and Ahikatl also participated in stopping the two celestial dragons. Lucifer, Belsay, Astaroth, and the original Mao Leviathan also perished in that massacre. However, before Elohim's death, he managed to kill and seal the two celestial dragons in sacred gears, or Longinus, with a curse attached. Despite this, their rivalry continued for several more millennia. Now it was the bearers' turn to fight to the death. That battle finally managed to force the factions and gods to put aside their differences. But even among the biblical factions, there was a certain resentment which caused the demons to eventually create their own civil war. In the end, everything ended in a non-aggression truce between the three factions. Well, you don't have to be so worried, Issei. I sent Valentina to take care of Kuoh. Azazel mentioned it to her son. Calming him down a bit, the black-haired man sighed, knowing that she would be able to stop him without much trouble. Looking back at his parents, who smiled, he hoped that his father would speak to him. Well, won't you tell me what happened between you and Penemia? Azazel said with an amused smile on his face. Closing his eyes, Issei sighed, cursing how his father must have buried his father. He and Penemu slept together. I think it's pretty obvious that Penemu is really in love with you. Well, he could no longer know what to answer his father. Issei had to think about many things. Clearly he knew the reason why Penemu fell from the sky, and it was none other than her in her time as an angel. She was the one who protected and watched over the safety of the children, but suddenly she began to obsess over children and reached that point of no return that made her fall from the sky. She began to rape children, whether boys or girls. She ended up raping them. All the highest-ranking fallen angels and those who participated in that war and survived committed great atrocities in the human world. His father, Azazel, fell to lust. He ended up having relationships with human women. You're still worried, aren't you? After what Azazel said, Issei raised his gaze, meeting Azazel's gaze. I understand that you don't have a good image of Penemu, especially that past she has with children, but the truth is I've never seen her so happy to be by your side. Since you were born, she took care of you, she even breastfed you. And you enjoyed touching their breasts. I even think you made her come more than once. I'm going to. With a dead voice, Issei answered his father, who quickly smiled nervously because he probably said more than he should have. Forget what I told you, but Issei, if you let your insecurities get to you with girls, you'll never be able to move forward. Besides, Penemu wouldn't mind if you had a harem as long as she came first. Sighing, I think you're right about that. I think I'll talk to her later, Issei said. But leaving aside my romantic problems, why did you call me? I don't think it's just because of Kuoh, right? Azazel nodded as he relaxed. Well, I called to tell you about Kuoh. But I also called about something else that has nothing to do with Kuoh. And that would be it. After Kuoh's attack, I think you know what's coming, right? Yes, was Issei's response. Understanding what his father was referring to, it was no secret to Issei that what his father wanted most was to make an alliance with the other factions. And now with the topic of Kuoh and his failure, surely a meeting would be held and Azazel would take advantage of it to form the alliance. Besides, it wasn't a secret to Issei who his father was good friends with Justice Gremory, or Lucifer, who was a true monster in combat. Not for nothing was he one of the great Satans and an ultimate class devil. The generation of new Mao is completely plagued by extremely powerful Mao, capable of destroying an entire nation, all four of them together. The first Mao and the most powerful of the four was Sirzechs, who holds the title of Lucifer, has a great amount of magical power, and not counting his power of Hakai no Chikara. Second was the Leviathan Mao Seraph Citri, known better, and her powerful handling of ice. Ajuka Belzebu, a genius and above all a great strategist, and finally the Mao Asmodeus. Although he appears to be lazy and sleeps a lot, the demon was undoubtedly a machine, and when he got excited his blows were his strongest point. There were rumors that his fists were capable of piercing the soul of the enemy. I see, I'm glad to know you know he's coming later, Azazel said. But I want you to do something for me on the day of the meeting. Raising an eyebrow in curiosity, Issei answered his father with, yes, to which Azazel sighed. I want you to take care of something very important on the day of the meeting. What would that be? You'll see, son. Chapter 5. I can't believe you want me to go to Asgard and talk to Odin. Take it on the bright side, you'll have a well-deserved vacation after all. Smiling, Azazel responded to his only son Issei, and Azazel were currently at his house. Or rather, Issei was at his parents' house at the table where his mother had already finished preparing the family dinner. Azazel, I thought I told you that our son shouldn't have risky missions. Calm down, Mickey. Odin and I have been very good friends for quite some time. Besides, I already told him that our son will be coming to pick up something very important. Go to Helheim, where the goddess of death herself, Hela, is located, and you're telling me I didn't care about our son, Azazel. Both men shuddered in fear. His wife/mother was undoubtedly a rather reckless person, and Issei had great respect for his mother, as she dominated and complimented his father over their long years of marriage. She was also the one who ruled in their relationship. Mickey, calm down. Besides, Issei won't be going to Asgard alone. Penemu will be accompanying him too. Sigh, it's okay. I can trust Penemu to take care of him. I'll go to bed. See you later, darling. Mickey approached her son and kissed him on the cheek and then went to her room, leaving the two men who looked at each other. Well, we were having our conversation about ice, Issei said. Yes, that's true, Azazel said. Hela, I don't have much information about what she's like and how she really acts. But I know you know something about the same Norse mythology. Right, Issei? Yes, I do have some information about Norse mythology, and I have a few stories about Hela, as well as rumors about why Odin left her in the underworld and that she is the goddess of death. According to rumors, Hela. Her face was split down the middle. She was completely alive and very pretty. However, the other side of her face was completely opposite. And they say she gives off a horrible smell in addition to the dead flesh she possesses. Issei nodded and looked at his father once more with a serious expression. Hela or Hel was the one in charge of the dishonorable dead in the underworld in Norse mythology. Daughter of the god Loki and the giant sorceress from Jotunheim, Angerboda, Hela reigns over Helheim, where she lives under one of the roots of Yggdrasil. On one side of her body she was truly beautiful, but the other side was like that of a rotting corpse and a nauseating smell came from it. It is believed that Hela is represented like this because of how death is seen by men. However, there was not much detailed information because no one had ever seen her, as she really was Odin himself, and the inhabitants of Asgard knew what she was truly like. Not understanding why I'm the one who has to go to Asgard. Can't someone better qualified than me go? Yes. But Issei-kun, this is actually a better opportunity for you. Well, not only do you have to learn about the world when you take over as leader of the Gregory, you also have to get to know the world. The world is quite big and has a lot to offer, and you can have fun if you put your mind to it. I understand, Issei nodded. As he stood up and looked at his father once more. I have to go. See you tomorrow before I leave for my trip, Issei said. As he left in a magic circle, Azazel leaned back and then a small smile of amusement appeared on his face. What awaits you when you go to Asgard? It was the day Hyoudou Issei was about to leave for Asgard. A day like no other for Issei. He was accompanied by Reincarnation, who was wearing civilian clothes, and Penemu herself, wearing a secretary suit. We are here, father. After his announcement, Issei met the gaze of not only Azazel but several other Gregory leaders, including Betrayal. Shimasai, one of the main Gregory leaders who had also been his mentors when he was a child. Well, Issei, I see you already have your escorts. Looking at Penemu and Reincarnation, who nodded, Azazel let out a sigh. Listen carefully when you go to Asgard. You'll have to avoid provoking the Asgardians, especially him. They're too violent, and above all, try as little as possible not to anger Thor. He's quite an explosive person. Thor, the well-known berserker of thunder. He was the first son of the god Odin. Not only was he extremely strong, but he was also a total killer beast. He was an extremely powerful opponent, especially since he had no traits that could prevent him from being killed by the Norse god. There are several rumors that traveled during the golden years of Norse mythology. In the great golden era of Norse mythology, the Aesir were completely independent beings who sought to conquer the 9 realms: Helheim, Niflheim, Muspelheim, Svartalfheim, Alfheim, Vanaheim, and Jotunheim. For years, the Norsemen carried out massacres in an attempt to expand their entire kingdom into the afterlife. Odin, who was then a young king of Asgard, was the commander, and along with his spear Gungnir, they devastated several kingdoms. Simsees reached a point where the war made Odin think, and then from that day on, Odin and his policy of conquest changed radically, being this: make a peace treaty with other kingdoms during the years that the Aesir began their peace truce. The time came where Odin granted his first son Thor. Thor, who was quite a child prodigy, Odin began to see how his son was following the same path as him: the great war against the Jotun. The Jotun were a race of giants with strength, frost giants or ice giants, who populated Niflheim, the world of fog, cold, and ice. If he seized them, they did not pass beyond Asgard. Thor was the only one who took care of them. And with a single movement of his Mjolnir, Thor killed all the Jotun, standing in that empty field where the great rain of blood covered his body. A battle. No! A humiliation that culminated in the death of several Jotun. Knowing that, Issei as Penemu and Reincarnation would have to take care of not making him angry. Well, with all that said, wait a minute, Azazel. Before he could finish speaking, Betrayal and the Shimasai approached Issei and company. Is something wrong, uncle? Before you go, we need to give you some items for your trip. Saying that, Betrayal took out a light purple crystal flower with 7 petals. This is a conceptual weapon, or rather a shield. Smiling at him, Barakiel handed the chestnut tree the flower. Issei took it and nodded, then placed it in a magic circle. He looked at Shimasai, who sighed, saying, "You better not break it. It took me a long time to get these materials. And it was supposed to be a birthday present for you, but here you go." Shimasai would appear a magic circle on the ground. And from it emerged what looked like a sword handle. However, the sword handle was shaped like a motorcycle barrel with a brake attached. "Go ahead, take it." Following Shimasai's advice, Issei pulled the sword completely out of the magic circle, and was slightly surprised to see the sword he had now. "That's it, Red Queen." Before finishing her prayer, the Red Queen is the sword Shimasai found and modified, giving it the appearance of a chainsaw. Also, being mechanical, it has the ability to charge itself. Turning the handle releases a powerful propulsion that turns into a flare along the edge of the blade. This ability is called Exceed, which is capable of acquiring more power. This power could send any normal person flying, so Issei is the only one capable of using it. "It's a gift, don't destroy it." Saying that, Shimasai took a few steps back and Azazel approached the group. "Well, I have nothing to give you but good luck." With that said, Azazel looked at Penemu, who nodded. "Come closer, we'll go." Reincarnation and Issei stood beside Penemu. Issei looked at his father and uncles once, and then they both disappeared from that place, in the blink of an eye. The trio of fallen angels had appeared right on top of an ice mountain, seeing their gaze. "This is Asgard." Reincarnation finished speaking to Issei. Both of them saw the place for the first time. It was absolutely beautiful, a completely beautiful city. "Come on, we have." Before finishing speaking, the group was surrounded by several women wearing armor. Among them was one who stood out. She had beautiful silver hair and green eyes. "Who are they and what do they want here?" "We are members of the fallen angel faction, and we've come so we can speak with Odin-sama." The group of women looked at each other and nodded. It was the silver-haired woman who spoke again. "I understand, follow me, I'll take you to Odin-sama." The trio nodded and began to follow the group of women. During their little tour, Issei looked around the place, amazed by how beautiful Asgard was. Upon reaching the palace where the god Odin himself was, the group entered. Arriving at the room where there was a throne, Issei could see a female figure sitting right there. "Odin-sama, we brought some visitors." The group of girls knelt down. "I understand. You can go except for you, Rosweiss." With that said, both Issei and Reincarnation widened their eyes in surprise at the sight of a beautiful woman. Odin is a woman who possesses a voluptuous body figure, fair skin, and shoulder-length silver-blue Nordic hair. She was often seen wearing armor that almost left her entire body exposed. The armor appears as claws groping her massive bust, while a diamond-shaped scale covers her crotch area like adhesive underwear. She is also seen wearing a black eye patch covering her right eye. "It's a pleasure to see you again, Nina." Looking at Penemu, Odin approached Penemu, who bowed slightly. "The pleasure is mine, Odin-sama." "Leave the sama aside, kiddo. It makes me feel old." Saying that, she would look at Issei and Reincarnation. "So this is Azazel's son. He doesn't look anything like him," Odin said. "He's tall, has nice hair and very pretty eyes, a pretty boy." Smiling at him with mockery, Odin began to touch a part of Issei, who didn't know how to respond to this. "You're prettier than your father, congratulations on that, kid." Before answering, Issei jumped slightly. The reason for his jump was that Odin touched the place where his genitals were located. "Ha ha ha!" With Odin's laughter, and the evil look that Penemu and Reincarnation gave him. Whatever, what's your name, brat?" Without respect and without mincing words, Odin asked the brown-haired man and waited for his answer. "Issei Hyoudou Issei." "Issei, nice name by the way," said Odin. "And you, brat?" Turning her gaze to Reincarnation, who flinched at Odin's gaze, she bowed slightly. Reincarnation. "Odin-sama, what a coward." Smiling mockingly at him, she then walked to her throne. She then sat down, and at her side stood the woman now known as Rosweiss. Odin looked at the group once more. "Well, Azazel called me saying he was looking for something in Helheim, is that correct?" Rosweiss's eyes widened in surprise as she looked at the group, who nodded. Taking the word Penemu. "That's right, Odin-sama. We have a business to do with you, if you're interested." Gaining Odin's curiosity, she nodded. "Okay, brat, I listened to your proposal." Penemu smiled. While Reincarnation, Rosweiss, and Issei watched the entire interaction of both females, Chapter 6. These were the thoughts of Issei, who was standing in a combat arena while in the stands several Asgardians were totally excited while Odin Penemu and Reincarnation accompanied also by the Valkyrie Rosweiss. He still couldn't believe that Penemu and the goddess Odin Allen had come to an agreement for a possible alliance with the Fallen. The reason he's in the arena is because Issei has to fight Odin's most powerful son. He's nervous and hopes his sword can hold its own against the Norse god who will be his opponent. He hopes it's not him he has to fight because he knows he's going to get hurt badly, or worse, maybe even not come out alive. And well, people of Valhalla, we are here to see this friendly encounter where this fallen angel, who is here, will try to beat the best Nordic warrior Thor. Issei's eyes widened in surprise and he couldn't help but swallow in fear because his fight right now was screwed. Damn my luck! A huge door opened and from there entered an extremely tall man with long red hair carrying a gigantic hammer on his shoulder. While Issei watched the Norse god who stopped several meters away from him, making his sword Red Queen appear in his right hand, he stood on guard while Thor just watches. In the stands, specifically where Penemu Rosweiss and Reincarnation were standing next to Odin, they were completely worried, or rather, completely worried, about the teenager on the field, and Rosweiss could only feel pity. Don't worry, if the brat is really strong enough, he'll surely beat you. Penemu would turn around and look at her as if she had said something stupid. Really? He'll be fighting one of the strongest existences that enters the top 20 of the most powerful beings in the world. Sighing, believe me, Brat Thor is strong, but if the son of the brat Azazel wins, he'll have what he wants, and I'm not going to form an alliance with the biblical factions just like that without anything in return. And it's better for him to prove if he's a true leader on the battlefield. But, no buts. Stopping Penemu's words, Odin looked at the group, who shuddered at the Norse goddess's gaze. Listen to me carefully, child, we may be at peace, but we have our own methods for making peace treaties with the other kingdoms of the New Worlds. And the reason I want Azazel's son to fight is to see if he's a good leader and knows how to deal with the battlefield. In the end, Penemu said nothing more and looked back at the arena and hoped that Issei would win. Thor would look at Issei, who was on guard with Red Queen. Start! With that shout, the first to attack was Issei, who quickly ran towards the god of thunder who was waiting for the fallen. Taking a half jump, he launched a blow with his sword, but it was easily blocked by Mjolnir. Both began to struggle each other, but with the difference that Issei did everything possible to move him. However, Thor pushed him and attacked Issei, who reacted by dodging the attack. Making a detour, he attacked him again, but this time it was too late because Thor had already attacked with Mjolnir, causing Issei to not be able to block with his sword and received the blow and flew to crash into the wall. Gah! Spitting saliva, Issei dropped Red Queen a few meters away from him. Thor this time returned to attack him directly to Issei, who upon seeing the attack against him, and would launch a great direct blow with Mjolnir. Who upon seeing the attack, Issei dodged the attack doing a somersault, and then running in a somewhat desperate manner would take Red Queen. And turning around, he managed to block the attack with Thor. Standing at a very prudent distance, he observed them. Thor didn't say a word while Issei closed his eyes slightly and looked at the god. He had to admit it. The rumors of the Norse god were completely nothing special, and in the end, he had to admit it, the rumors weren't far from what they say. He was completely terrifying. Thor certainly fit the bill for the strongest Norse god and lives up to his nickname of the Thunder Berserker. It's interesting, you know, for the first time Thor spoke while watching Issei, who stood on guard. Now no one has been able to be my rival and survive the first blow with my Mjolnir, and you managed to survive. Now let's get serious. Leaning back as if he were about to hit the floor, Issei thought he'd lost his balance. But he was wrong. That's when he moved forward, and then the hammer came hurtling down at him. Seeing the hammer coming straight for him, Issei's eyes widened as he realized the hammer was coming without stopping. But it was at that moment that he remembered his master Barakiel, who had given him that shield. Concentrating her magic, she guided it to her right arm where she held the flower-shaped crystal. The light purple color the crystal gave off intensified and began to glow before exploding in a golden flash. The golden flash was covered by flames of intense pink, the magic running up her arm and swirling to her hand where it began to take shape. The dancing flames froze when they accumulated enough magic and took the form of a flower bud that began to bloom, slowly opening its petals that gave off a faint violet light. When the bud fully bloomed, a huge 7-petaled delphinium flower appeared in front of him, releasing a golden flash that shot forward, displaying 6 rings of transparent energy that emitted a pinkish color before disappearing, revealing the shield in all its splendor. Everyone opened their eyes incredibly wide upon seeing that beautiful flower that appeared. More than one had their mouths open, and others looked with great fascination upon seeing that beautiful flower. On the other hand, Penemi was completely open-mouthed upon recognizing that beautiful flower, and Rosweiss was also amazed to see her, and Odin simply looked at that beautiful flower, and a smile formed upon recognizing that shield. Rising from her throne, she began to approach the edge to admire the shield. Although she had never cared about the appearance of objects, always looking on the practical side, she couldn't deny that the shield of Ajax the Great wasn't beautiful. She knew the story of the Trojan War and the 2 fights between Hector and Ajax. She knew it inside and out. The only shield her sword couldn't pierce was impossible for her not to know the shield. Somehow, she wanted to find out if Mjolnir could pierce that shield. Penemi just stared and tried to figure out how Barrakiel managed to get so many materials. Even though it was beautiful, remember that shield from another mythology will support a sword from heaven. The spear was made with materials from heaven, even though it was a common material, a weapon carried by all angels over time, and the legend that came next was responsible for giving it power. When the spear broke, it was reformed with objects from 3 saints and some alchemy. The spear was restored into the sword Duranal. Ajax's shield was a bronze shield covered with 7 layers of oxhide, mundane and poor materials compared to the sacred mineral from heaven, and yet the spear never scratched the 6th layer of the shield. Its legend and the misfortune that no one who had seen the shield was alive or had managed to leave an image of it for posterity caused the shield to change shape because of its legend, becoming a conceptual weapon that was capable of bending the laws of the world to change. Both noble phantasms reformed by their legend and never faced each other after that raised new doubts as to which weapon was superior now. Duranal, the incomparable sword, when forged by the hands of angels became a divine builder acquired the power to cut any object. Ro Ajax, the 7 rings that cover the furious skies, its legend gave it the power so that no weapon thrown was able to penetrate the shield completely. With the red and white dragon awakened, Caliban with a new bearer, a homunculus of Siegfried and a homunculus of Sigurd did not rule out that Gram, Dawn of Ruin, would soon appear attracted by the clones, Duranal and Ro Ajax equally with bearers. There was no doubt that a dark time was approaching, and in dark times legends rose to face adverse times. In the Mjolnir combat arena, it collided with Ro Ajax and caused a large space wave to be generated throughout the place, causing more than one to fall back. Issei began to drag himself while various wounds began to appear on his body. Cuts on both arms began to appear, destroying some of his clothing. The part of his ribs as well as the abdomen and right on the cheeks very close to the chin began to show some small cuts on his body, and that was when the first layer of the shield broke. Issei stepped back again, gritting his teeth and trying to exert more force, which caused his legs to receive scratches. Ah! Giving that war cry. Issei was looking for a way to try to counterattack Thor's hammer. It was said that the hammer never misses any attack and always hits the target. Right now he is dealing with Ro Ajax, the famous shield of Ajax, putting his hand on his right arm. Issei began to force his body to stand up while avoiding at all costs the advance of Mjolnir. Thor in the distance only watched as his famous Mjolnir tried to pierce the rings of Ro Ajax. Of course, he just destroyed 2 of them right now, and the shield was still holding. While Issei was taking a massive amount of damage to his body, and Mjolnir this time destroyed the 3rd in a row, the 4th, and then 2 in a row, leaving the last layers of Ro Ajax. It was still holding, and a gigantic explosion erupted throughout the arena, blinding everyone in the arena. As the enormous smoke screen formed, Thor raised his arm and opened his hand to hold Mjolnir. It returned to his grasp. Everyone was completely expecting to see what would happen with that devastating attack. Little by little, the smoke cleared, and that's when they saw something that surprised everyone. Ah! The cry of joy of all the Asgardians who could not believe what they were seeing. The last layer of Ro Ajax. He was still standing with several scratches, causing the excitement to increase more in all the Asgardians who waited for the fight to continue. Even with his arm extended, Issei was completely tired but happy not to die in his first real fight. having large wounds on every part of his body as well as blood coming out of his nose and mouth. He slightly raised his gaze, seeing the god in front of him waiting patiently. Lowering his arms, Ajax finished disappearing while Issei fell to his knees while looking for air. He raised his gaze slightly with a smile, seeing Thor, who was still somewhat amazed at having blocked the attack and proving that Ajax's famous shield was completely invincible, or well, largely managed to resist it. I think I'm going to faint at any moment, but, using his great willpower, he would try to stand up with everything he had. And taking Red Queen. His gaze shifted to the Norse god Thor, who simply nodded in approval, a smile appearing on his face as well. Congratulations on successfully holding Mjolnir. You're the first person in history to stop my most powerful attack, yet it seems our battle is over, and you can barely stand up. I know, but I'm not going to back down from a battle. Wow, what a great determination. Then I think I should answer that determination with all my power. Tell me, fallen angel, what is your name? Issei smiled and, Hyoudou Issei, and I am the son of Cadre Azazel. Well, Hyoudou Issei, do me a favor and don't die now. With that last smile, Thor charged at Issei. Not wanting to be tied down, Issei began to run at the Norse god. Throwing his hammer, it flew past Issei's side. Thor put his hand out, and with great speed, he swung Mjolnir. It ended up in his hands. Spinning around thanks to the momentum, the hammer landed in his hands. Thor launched his attack, and Issei, along with Red Queen, also attacked. Ah! Gruah! And with those shouts, they both struck and a great pillar of light appeared in the middle. And everyone turned their attention again, and saw Thor still standing with Mjolnir still in his hands, and Issei was a few steps ahead of the god, still holding his sword with both hands. And, congratulations, you managed to hurt me, Hyoudou Issei. A large wound appeared across the Norse god's abdomen, causing everyone to gasp in surprise. But you gave your best, thank you for this battle. Issei released Red Queen and then fell to the ground face first, causing a large pool of blood to begin surrounding the Nephilim. While the people chanted and shouted at this event, and the winner is Thor-sama. And with that shout, the Norse god Thor demonstrated why he was one of the most powerful beings in the entire world. Issei, Penemu and Rainer quickly rushed over to help the brown-haired boy and heal him. Odin, for his part, had a big smile on his face after witnessing this beautiful fight. With her own eyes, the woman simply looked at Azazel's son once as she took a jar of honey water and drank it. Very well, Azazel. I believe you'll have an alliance with us. Congratulations. Your son really surprised me. And with that last thing, the Asgardian goddess would turn around and withdraw from that place. Chapter 7. Opening his eyes slightly, the first thing Issei saw was the ceiling of the place, feeling every fiber of his body completely crushed and injured. He didn't know how he was still alive, but he was happy to be living his life, even though he was pretty sure Rainer would beat him up. But meh, I see you're already awake, brat. Odin-sama? Issei said, looking at Odin, who was sitting cross-legged very close to his bed and with a satisfied smile. Probably because of the fight, or so he wanted to imagine, but anyway, what was she doing here now? I'm glad to know my son Thor didn't kill you with Mjolnir. You're tough enough to withstand a direct blow from your hammer, though it's not the same with your sword. I see you don't remember, but your sword is completely worn out. Even though you had good materials to make it, it was completely useless against Thor's hammer, and when more than once both weapons collided, Njano suffered great amounts of damage. I see, thanks for that, Odin-sama. You don't have to worry about that, brat. Now you better recover for a few days before you go to Helheim. Odin would stand up, turn around, and leave that place, leaving only Issei, who sighed. He was in trouble now, Reed Queen. It was half destroyed, and well, there was no other choice but to find a way to try to fix it. The door opened, and the brunette turned his head slightly, and saw who entered, Penemu. I'm glad you're awake, Issei-kun. Pen. Issei didn't finish speaking as Penemu hugged him tightly. This caused Issei to let out a small, muffled cry of pain. His body was still very sore. But upon hearing the sobs of his friends, he ignored it all and hugged them as well. I'm sorry. Don't worry about it, Penemu, Issei said. You didn't do anything wrong. I actually had fun in my first real battle. I understand, although now we will have to stay here for a few days until you fully recover from your injuries. I understand, Penemu. Smiling at him, Penemue placed Issei's head between her breasts. Issei sighed and stayed still, enjoying the sensation of Penemue's breasts, as well as feeling her heartbeat. It was very comfortable and very gratifying. Penemue, yes, Issei? Don't you want to go out and get to know Asgard a little? Okay, I think it would be best for you. Smiling, Issei nodded. Well, I'm glad, Penemue. I still think this is bucking amazing. Issei spoke in total amazement as he looked around the entire city of Asgard. After Thor and Issei's battle, the chestnut tree gained a certain fame among the Norse. As compensation, Odin allowed him to visit every place in Asgard. Issei, are you ready? S.I. Penemue. Issei would turn around to see Penemue and gasp. Penemue was wearing an open black leather jacket, dark blue mid-rise pants, and heels. How do I look? Beautiful, simply beautiful, Penemue. Smiling, Penemue ran over and hugged the brown-haired man's right arm. Thanks. Now where will we go? I don't know. What about if we know everything? I would like Issei, telling him that last bit. As much as Issei and Penemue began to know all of Asgard, while inside the castle was Odin. Sitting on her throne, she was looking in front of her at a specific person. What brings you here, Loki? Facing the Norse goddess of Asgard was the god of lies, Loki, who seemed unhappy. Why did you let those inferior beings enter Asgard? Maybe there's a problem there. You don't understand why we should be allies of those inferior beings. Loki, listen to me, Odin. I don't accept this. I don't accept this fact that you want to lower yourself by having an alia. Shut up, Loki. Striking with his Gungnir, he created a small ripple in the ground that made the god Loki fall silent as he stared directly at Odin. Odin's left eye glowed gold as he stared at the Norse god. Listen to me, Loki, the brat earned the right to roam freely around Asgard whether you liked it or not. Shut up, Odin said. I'm not finished yet. Loki had no choice but to remain silent as Odin leaned back in his throne and looked down at his son. Loki, whether you like it or not, we'll make an alliance with the fallen angels. We all agree it would be best to be with the biblical angels after all. It's time to put our differences aside. The woman stood up, her left eye glowing fiercely, creating a flame that protruded from it. So he ordered you not to dare disturb the fallen who are now visiting. Is that clear? Tsk, mother. Well, you can leave now. Loki would click his tongue and then leave the place, his voice very upset. Odin would sigh and settle back on his throne. Holding Gungnir, he would look in the doorway, and a black raven and a white one would land on his shoulders. I want you to keep an eye on him. If he does anything strange, let me know. The ravens quickly began to fly away from Odin's throne. The Norse goddess would simply look at her Gungnir once more, then simply rest her gaze on the door. Finally, the day was coming to an end for Issei and Penemue, who were currently on their way back to where they were staying. Probably with Rainer waiting for them. I had a lot of fun, Issei. Yes, me too. Penemue, Issei spoke the truth. Throughout the entire day, he enjoyed exploring much of Asgard with Penemue. He saw some important landmarks in each place they visited together. They also enjoyed the Asgardian food, and both had to admit it was a beautiful place. I think we're here, and they both arrived at Odin's castle. He simply didn't know whether to enter or stay together for a few more minutes. Issei looked at her, and she was just as expectant as he was. While he hesitated, he wondered whether to do it or not. Penemue, are you up? Now came the hard part. Closing his eyes slightly, Issei simply sighed and Penemue opened her eyes in surprise at Issei's sudden action. He was kissing her lips, but she still reciprocated his kiss. He hugged her waist and pulled her closer to him. Issei was in a complete trance. Issei ha chupinchu. Penemue would try to separate from the kiss, but he wouldn't let her. She was starting to get turned on as the kiss started to get much more intense. Leaning against the wall, Issei quickly brought his left hand to his left breast, and squeezing it drew a moan from Penemue, who blushed in embarrassment, as she was totally vulnerable to Issei's touch. Finally separating, leaving a thread of saliva, Issei looked into her eyes. Issei, it was surprising. Sorry, I think I got a little carried away. Issei would scratch his cheek while wearing a goofy smile. In the end, he attacked first, and would observe her again. Penemue, it's not okay, Penemue said. Relax, actually. I liked it, but tell me something. Do you also do this with Lavinia and Kuroka? A nervous smile appeared on his face. But he wasn't going to deny it either. about the kisses he always had with Kuroka and Lavinia when he was with one of the two girls. We'd better get inside. Yes, it will be the best. And so they both entered the enormous castle together. In the end, they both had a wonderful day together. So Azazel called while Issei and I were out. That's right, Penemiya-sama. Sighing, what does Azazel want now? 2 days ago it had been Issei and Penemiya's date just now. Both women were in the room getting ready to go to hell. To look for the fragments that Azazel sent to look for. 2 days ago Azazel had called Rainier to give her some important information. Azazel-sama seems like he'll have to deal with a faction meeting in 2 days regarding the Kokabil-sama incident, so Valentine managed to find Kokabil's whereabouts. Penemiya said with her arms crossed. Yes, but it seems that Kokabil hasn't just caused problems with the demonic factions, but also with the members of the church. What happened? Kokabil-sama appeared and not only attacked the Mao sisters' Sirzechs and Leviathan. He also stole fragments of the Excalibur sword. Penemiya let out a heavy sigh. In the end, it seems that everything is once again tense, more than usual, with the other biblical factions. All because of Kokabil. He was grateful that Valentina acted just in time and stopped the mad cadre. Excalibur is one of the 4 holy swords wielded by the legendary King Arthur Pendragon, of Camelot. Excalibur is a sacred weapon that was created through means of magic and alchemy by which it reached the territory of God. At some point, the original Excalibur was broken, and the pieces were made into 7 different swords, with the name Excalibur on them. 2 of the blades were each stored by the Catholic Church, seat of the Vatican, the Protestant Church, and the Eastern Orthodox Church. Valper Galilei, known as the Archbishop Genocide, used to experiment on humans to find people who were able to use the pieces of Excalibur, and eliminated those who were unable to do so. What happened to the fragments that Kokabil had? Penemiya asked. Sighing, they went back to the Catholic Church. Well, only one of the fragments is still in Kuoh City, but now it belongs to the demon's parts. Which fragments? The Durandal. Penemiya let out a heavy sigh and once again cursed under her breath. What was missing was that now the demons had one of the many fragments of the famous legendary sword in their hands. We'd better get ready to go now. I understand, Penemiya-sama. A massive thunderstorm was raging through Kuoh City. Meanwhile, in one of the apartment buildings, a man with black hair and blonde streaks sat with his arms crossed, staring into the fire in the fireplace. You arrived late. I apologize for that. But because you wanted to see me in this place, Azazel. Sighing, it's not much I say because I know that he is planning something against my son. Standing up, Azazel was surrounded by a purple energy. A smile formed on his face. You think I'm stupid and I wouldn't realize you're planning to betray me and the others. Kokabil was stupid, yes. Even if I let him walk free with you, he won't be the exception. With you, Tamil? But this time I'm in charge of you. Azazel spread his dark wings. In front of him was a man apparently about 35 years old with medium long hair, short medium-sized reddish eyes and medium-sized sharp teeth. Tamil was one of the first cadre-level fallen angels who were still alive after that biblical war, being this one who was on his knees while his entire body was bathed in blood. Azazel. A spear of light appeared in his hands and with a quick movement, Tamil's head fell to the ground. Sighing, Azazel turned slightly and saw a beautiful girl with silver hair, light blue eyes, and a beautiful mother enter. Her gaze was neutral, although it was noticeable that she was sweating. I see you've already finished the ones I asked you to do. Yes, they were difficult, but this is more interesting. I threw a folder at him. Azazel took it, opened it, and started reading all the files. It took about 30 minutes and, so I see that our suspicions were correct, Valentina. I understand what you want me to do now. Azazel would store the folder in a pocket dimension and then begin walking. Valentina followed him. Upon stepping outside, several fallen angels were all wet from the rain, although a large trace of blood could be seen on their bodies. I think it's time to make our next moves, don't you think? What will happen to Issei? Don't worry, he'll be fine after the meeting. I want you to continue with what you've planned so far. Sighing, okay, I'll take care of it. Chapter 8. Underworld. Things in the underworld were slightly quiet. Especially for a person currently sitting in a chair. His expression was completely relaxed despite being in front of a person who was totally dangerous. How long has it been since Sirzechs? The man greeted in a relaxed manner with a calm expression. on his face. Azazel, how have you been all this time? The man returned the friendly greeting. While they were having a drink, they were both completely at ease. Azazel, leader of the fallen, and Sirzechs Gremory, one of the most important mouths of the underworld. So, what is this meeting for? Azazel asked. Sign nothing important. I just wanted to talk to you about something important, Sirzechs said calmly. Well, what would it be about? I know you've been recruiting sacred gear users all these years, and that you're also no longer interested in a war, am I wrong? Azazel shakes his head and then places his fist against his right cheek. A slight smile appears on his face. No, you're not wrong about anything. What are you trying to get at? Tell me, Azazel. You don't want to form an alliance with the demon faction? Attracting all of Azazel's curiosity, he asked. What do you propose? I asked, and Sirzechs smiled. How about getting engaged with my younger sister? Azazel's eyes narrowed. Then he sighed as he smiled wryly. It was a good idea after all. With this he could finally investigate calmly. Rias Gremory was an heiress to an important clan like the Gremory family. She possessed great power from the Hakai no Cheek era running through her blood. And her son, her only son, Issei, who was the next leader of the fallen. Well, this got a little interesting, Azazel thought internally, as his eyes met Sirzechs's. Well, time for negotiations, huh? In Asgard, while in the enormous halls of Odin's castle, Issei and his company were walking, heading towards the room where they would meet with Odin, to go to Valhalla, where they would look for the materials Azazel needed. Upon arriving at the hall, they saw Odin, who was smiling broadly as he watched everyone already present. We are here, Odin-sama. Odin nodded and then stood up. Well, I'm glad. Before you go to Valhalla, I want to give this especially to you, because of the enemies you'll encounter there. What Odin said confused them. The doors opened and then a group of Valkyries entered, carrying some armor. These armors, they'll protect you from the cold. They're reinforced with runic magic. And above all, they have improvements for you. Looking at Issei. Because my son Thor destroyed your sword, I have this gift, take good care of it. Turning his gaze, he saw Rosweiss, who was carrying a huge box in her arms, which she then opened. Issei's eyes widened when he saw the sword in front of him. It was completely similar to his Red Queen. Only the design was completely different. The blade of the sword was fully engraved. As my son Thor had so much fun with you, he wanted to give you this gift. Above all, as a sign of respect he has for you, the sword's blade was made from the same materials as Mjolnir. But above all, it uses stardust, as it was also crafted under solar energy and enchanted with runic magic, Odin explained with a half-smile. And whatever you call it, it's fine. His eyes were wide open at this beautiful gift from the goddess. So he took hold of the sword's hilt. The runes on it began to glow. Then the transparent color of the sword began to change, from black to white. Something that made Odin look at this with a raised eyebrow. As he looked at the sword, he felt his body surrounded by a strange energy. He felt much stronger than before, and above all, he had so much energy he looked at the blade of the sword and felt all the power the sword was emanating. I'm going to call her Red Queen. With that said, Odin nodded pleased. And then she looked at the remaining Valkyries, and then they left that place without saying a word. That was the only one left in that place. Now then, I think we'd better go. You have a lot to do anyway. Rosweiss and I will accompany you to the Bifrost. It's okay, Odin-sama, Penemu said. Issei twirled his sword. He then placed it behind him as he began to walk. Everyone, without exception, left the throne of Asgard, Helheim, in a vast frozen wasteland. Inside a huge ice castle, sitting on a throne was a beautiful woman with pink hair, dark skin, yellow eyes, and rather large breasts. She sat on a throne with a disinterested and completely neutral look. May I know what brings you to my domain, father? The woman spoke calmly, while from her throne she looked in front of her at none other than Loki, who was smiling slightly as he looked at the woman in front of him. Hello, Hela. Loki spoke. How has everything been in this place? Narrowing her eyes, Hela stood up and looked at him. What do you want now? I want to offer you a deal. Hela's eyebrows rose in curiosity, and she nodded. Tell me, Hela, don't you want to leave this place? Don't you want to finally show yourself to the world? Don't you want to finally stop using magic to cover your body? Hela's eyes met those of the god of lies as half of Hela's body was revealed. Now her other half. She was completely hideous, and above all, the smell she gave off was completely hideous. What do you want? She said seriously, and Loki simply smiled. Human world. Somewhere in the human world, there was a girl wearing a gothic outfit. She was floating above a waterfall. Her gaze was completely neutral and reflected no emotion. Ophis. With that cry, the dragon goddess of infinity, Ophis Ouroboros, one of the strongest existences in the supernatural world. Capable of single-handedly destroying an entire continent, as well as facing off against a legion of supernatural beings. Valentina? Turning around, she saw none other than Valentina. The hacker Yoku. Ophis? I have some business to discuss with you. Seeing this, the curious Ophis descended a little from the heavens and tilted his head to one side. About what? It's about the members who are in the Cow's Brigade. Narrowing her eyes, she nodded. What happened? Apparently a member of the former Demon King faction. They seem to be gathering behind your back. And they're planning something. It doesn't matter as long as I can get my home back. Everything will be fine. I understand, Ophis. Albion, have you heard from Ddraig? With that question, enormous blue wings emerged from Vala's back. Well, apparently he woke up recently because Azazel said so. The bearer of Ddraig is with the demons. I see. Helheim. In a large, desolate wasteland, a portal opened, and from it emerged Issei, accompanied by Penemu, Rainier, and Rosweiss, who was wearing her Valkyrie costume. These are Helheim, the kingdom of the dead, Rosweiss said. The temperature of the place was completely freezing. Snow covered every corner of Helheim. There was nothing but an ice-covered valley. Come on, we have to find what Azazel asked for. Do we know where we need to go? Rainier asked. We must go through the main entrance. The place where the dead who didn't die in battle. With Rosweiss' words, everyone nodded and began walking. Without even noticing, a black crow was watching everything from a distance. While walking throughout the Norse realm of the dead, they saw how most of the statues of various Norse gods were completely destroyed. Not a single one was intact, and the place was completely ruined. What could have happened to this place to make it look like this? Rainier asked. It was 3,000 years ago. Right when the first ones were born. Children of Loki-sama, this place is known because those who never died in battle are brought to this place. That it is under the care of Hela. Rosweiss explained a little. According to what Momer told me, a war broke out between the Valkyries and the goddess Hela. When she was brought to this place by force by Odin-sama when no one wanted her. Like the rest of Loki-sama's children, Hela was forced to rule this kingdom. After a curse. It was because the rest feared him, right? Issei asked. After Issei said this, Rosweiss nodded. And continued, that's how the rest of the villagers are, as well as the gods. They felt disgust and fear at the sight of her. All except Odin-sama, who spent the most time with her and raised her without ever denying her anything but. All three of their gazes turned to Rosweiss, who let out a sigh. But when the war against the Jotun began, she participated as Odin-sama's second in command. It was said to be a fierce war, and that she had no chance, and she was as powerful as Thor-sama himself. With that in mind, Odin-sama decided to grant her the title of Goddess of Death. Did something happen after that? Penemu asked, which Rosweiss denied. No, in fact there is almost no information what happened after that. There are many rumors, but it is not known what caused Hela-sama to end up being condemned to rule Helheim. No one said anything else and continued on their way. When they arrived, they saw an enormous bridge, and on that bridge, everyone watched as a large crowd of souls walked in a single file, while above the gates stood two statues with enormous wings. Those who guard the gates. Behind the gates was an enormous castle. Is that it? The place where the materials Azazel asked for are? Penemu said. We can go through that door without any problems, right? I highly doubt it's that easy. What Rainier said. It made everyone nod. The gate is guarded by two Valkyries, of higher rank and who serve the goddess Freya-sama, and they are not very friendly. So, I'll try to talk to them, but they've been in this place for so long, it'll be hard to know if they're still sane. Rosweiss said seriously, looking at the doors. What do you mean by that? Penemu asked. Rosweiss looked at Penemu, and then sighed. Not only Hela was banished to this place, But a group of rebel Valkyries were also brought to this place with a curse imposed on them because they rebelled when the queen of the Valkyries, Freya-sama, and Odin had a dispute which caused Freya to be banished from Asgard. Everyone turned their gaze to Rosweiss. Wait, wasn't Freya Odin's wife? Rosweiss nodded at what Issei said. Wait, that means Odin. Issei's eyes widened, as if he had had a divine revelation, while Penemy sighed knowing that she would have to explain this as well. So you're telling me that Odin practically made Fuchinari to have children? After the question, Issei Rosweiss blushed in embarrassment, understanding what he wanted to say, but before even answering, he said in advance, Issei, yeah, you know Odin-sama. She wasn't the only one in history to have had futures in the past. In fact, even King Arthur Pendragon was a woman and had Hex with her own sister, Morgana. Wait, what? This was new. Who would have imagined it? How the great king of Great Britain, Arthur Pendragon, was a woman, and above all, she was incestuous. Well, there's a reason he was also known as the incestuous king. You'd better finish this first. Rainer's words made everyone nod, snapping Rosweiss out of her stupor. She quickly recovered and nodded. You're right, Rainer-san, but I have to tell you this, and it's extremely important. Drawing everyone's curiosity. The Valkyries are much stronger than us due to Odin-sama's curse. We have to be very careful with their magical attacks, and especially with closing the distance. Understood. With that said, the group began walking towards the door, which was guarded by 2 Valkyries. Chapter 9. Boom! It was the gigantic explosion that was heard throughout the place, causing a tremendous tremor throughout the place. Closer to that place of the explosion was Issei with his fallen angel wings fully deployed. Hiya! Was the shout of Rosweiss, who cast several magic spells with runes. Issei-kun, this is too much for the 4 of us. Rainer spoke, throwing several spears of light, killing the undead. Were the undead supposed to be controlled by Hela? It's because she herself sent them towards us, Penemy said, approaching the duo accompanied by Rosweiss. Think about it, Rainer. We are in the territory of a Norse god, who was practically banished and forced to do the job that no one wants, and none of the Norse gods want to come see her since they are very afraid of her. I think it's quite stupid to be afraid of a goddess who practically treats all those souls with so much love and affection. Issei said with his arms crossed. Are all the gods completely arrogant? Asked the brown-haired boy, looking at the Valkyrie, who let out a sigh. It was like this before. Rosweiss affirmed what Issei had said. None of the gods or even the villagers wanted to come to this place or die, even though Hela-sama always treated everyone well. But well, Rosweiss looked at the castle. For anyone from those times, it was a disgrace to die without going to the battlefield and not going to Valhalla, where all the souls of the strongest warriors in all of Asgard are found. The group would begin to walk towards Hela's castle, until at that moment they had faced 2 renegade Valkyries who were guarding the main gates of the Nordic underworld. The cold that was felt in the place was completely different from what Issei was used to. Okay, I think the Norse gods were complete idiots, Issei said near Rosweiss. Hey Issei, Rainer said, looking at the black-haired man. It's not right. Rosweiss took the floor. He's right. The Norse gods who were alive in those times were quite proud and arrogant. But after having lost against the Christian faction, it hit them with a reality check that they were not the most powerful like the rest of mythology, she said. I see. So that's the reason why almost all the mythologies in the world hate us, Issei said with a hand on his chin. In itself that is very true. But the one who seems to hate the most, all of us, the fallen and the demons, or rather any supernatural being on this planet, is Hades. Penemy spoke, approaching the group. He is the only god who is capable of doing everything possible to exterminate every supernatural being on this planet, especially the demons and fallen angels. Is he really capable of that? Issei looked at the fallen girl, who nodded. Why does he hate us so much? Sigh, that's very easy to answer, Issei. Penemy directed her gaze towards the black-haired man. He doesn't hate all of us for occupying, or rather usurping, the underworld that he believes is his. Penemy said, stopping her steps like the rest. Well, it seems we reached the last door. Pay attention. Well, here we go, Issei said, opening the door, and the moment he opened it, everyone noticed and didn't see at all. No one, huh? I'm not supposed to find ice in this place. I was supposed to be serious, Rosweiss said, looking everywhere. What are some fallen angels doing in my domains? A feminine voice spoke, attracting everyone's curiosity. When they turned their gaze towards the voice, they saw Hela, who was behind them with a sword in her hands. Better speak quickly. Hela-sama, We didn't come to cause trouble in your territory. In fact, we wanted to ask you a favor. Penemu took the floor, taking a step forward. We're simply here on business. Hump, what kind of business are you talking about? Hela asked, looking at the fall. No, we can give you the freedom to the human world that has been denied to you so much, Issei said, interrupting Penemu. Everyone's eyes, including Hela's, opened slightly, as she looked at Issei in surprise. Penemu was about to say something but saw Issei stand in front of her and look at Hela. How do I know it's not a trap to seal me away? Or rather, the question here is, Hela pointed with a finger, why did I want to leave this place? Even if you tell me that, you simply don't want to be here in this place. Or rather, you don't want to be with the Nordics anymore. Or am I wrong? Issei asked with a raised eyebrow. And how are you going to do it, huh? How do I know that this is just a trick to make me accept what you're looking for, and you'll leave me locked up in this place? Issei asked coldly. I can assure you, Hela. Issei walked as he was close to the goddess of death, and extended his palm forward, that I will do everything possible so that you can go out into the world, and also get to know it as a future leader. I want to have many powerful allies on my side, he said with a smile, looking at Hela, who simply looked into Issei's eyes for a few moments. Sighing, it's okay, Hela shook his hand, I'll trust you for now. In Asgard, more specifically in the castle where Odin was, who was sitting cross-legged on his throne, was waiting for the arrival of Issei and company, since it turns out that everything went well and that right now he had to wait for them to arrive. Finally, a magic circle was formed in the middle of the room, and finally everyone left. Odin put on a slight smile, and then quickly erased that smile when he saw who else was accompanying the group of fallen angels and the Valkyrie. What are you doing out there, Hela? Odin spoke coldly as all the soldiers of Asgard quickly stood guard. Calm down, Odin. I didn't come to fight or anything. Hela took the floor and then set her sights on Issei. I made a deal with him, so I just want to talk. Odin would look at the black-haired man. Is that true? That's right, Issei confirmed, taking a step forward. I made a deal with the goddess of Helheim, to be able to get the materials that father sent me to look for, and also that I will take care of her. Odin narrowed his eyes. All right, I'll trust you. That, Odin-sama cannot let that aberration be free from its cage. Many Norse gods were in complete disagreement with what Odin was doing by letting the goddess of Helheim free, something that Odin was slightly annoyed by. Silence. Who said that was Thor? Making more than one person close their mouths. It's an order from father, you better respect it. Thanks for that, Thor. Odin smiled with thanks while he saw the other gods upset. But they could not do anything now. Hela, before you go to the human world, tell me who guarded the entrances to Helheim? You don't have to worry about that, Odin. Even if I leave, I won't leave aside my work in Helheim. I'll come once a week to keep order. Hela sighed and then crossed her arms. Also, I can't be out for too long, because my powers need to be recharged. I understand, Hela. Odin would look at the group of fallen angels, especially Issei. Tell me, son of Azazel, are you sure you can take care of Hela? She is a very powerful goddess, and you are just getting to know the world. I know that I'm not too strong right now. Issei confirmed what Odin said, but I know that I can confirm in Hela, and in the future I will be the leader of the fallen, and it won't hurt to have allies for the future. Odin smiled at how intelligent this boy was and had to admit, he was gaining her interest in how he acted and thought, but he quickly looked away from Hela, who was waiting for Odin to speak. Fine, I'll let you go free, Hela, but you'll be in the care of the brat, Odin said seriously. And one more thing before I forget. If you try to do something to him, or even if you try to pull the brat or cause chaos, Hela, I'll show you hell itself with my hands. His only eye shone an intense golden color. I understand, Hela replied. Well, we're here, said a brown-haired man looking around the place. Are you sure this is the place? Said a blond teenage boy. Naya, Artur, Naya, you must stay calm. If she wanted us to meet here, there must be a reason. Naya, this time a black-haired girl with 2 cat ears, spoke. Sigh, I hate to admit it, but the cat is right. The man spoke. This is the place Valentina asked for to meet, so we must wait for her to arrive. Okay, Biko, Artur said, looking at the monkey-like man. By the way, Kuroka. Biko looked at the Nikomata, who was sitting cross-legged on a rock. How did you meet Valentina? Naya, it was very easy. I was looking for the 2 celestial dragons. Naya, Kuroka replied. And why were you looking for the 2 celestial dragons? To have protection from the demons who are looking for you, Artur said, looking at the Nikomata, who let out a sigh. So what was the reason? Biko said. I wanted to have strong kittens with one of the 2 celestial dragons, Naya, But I ended up finding out that this celestial dragon is actually female. Naya Kuroka replied with a sigh, although there is still the Sekyudai Naya. And if the Sekyudai is also female? Artur spoke. Think about it. In each era it is very rare to see two celestial dragons that are not of the same gender. And with so many with the fingers of one hand, there were few celestial dragons of different genders. The blonde stood with his arms crossed looking at the Nikomata. Arturo is right, Kuroka. It is very difficult for there to be another male celestial dragon in this era, said a female voice from the shadows. Oh, you're here, Valentina. Naya. How long has it been? Kuroka asked. Since you started talking about dragons, he replied, coming out of some bushes. But leaving that aside, today I want to tell you something very important. And what would be so important about that, Valentina? Artur asked, looking at the human-dragon-demon hybrid. Ophis came to talk to me directly a while ago. She wants me to join her cause, Valentina said, surprising everyone. Although Ophis's goal is clearly something impossible to achieve, and whether I want it or not, it is something that I am also interested in. In addition to discovering something very important, Valis smiled. I discovered that apparently Ophis is assembling an army of several demons from the ancient faction of the Maus, along with different races who are also ready to fight Ophis. Oh, ha ha ha, how interesting. Biko smiled with some emotion. It means that all those who are following Ophis are prepared to wage war, right? You're not wrong, Valentina replied with her arms crossed. The problem is that all those who are united have something in common, and that is that they want to set the world on fire. Destroy it completely. Valentina let out a heavy sigh. That's why I informed Azazel what Ophis was doing. And what do I think about it, Azazel? Artur asked. It's something easy to tell you. That's why I wanted to have this little meeting. Valentian stood with his arms crossed, making his breast stand out. Azazel wants me to accept to investigate from within, while the /dog team is in charge of searching for information in the shadows. Naya, it's something interesting and fun, but what do we gain, Naya? Kuroka asked. Valentina looked at Kuroka and then at the rest, and let out a sigh. Kuroka, you will be able to be free of your charges. Also, you and Artur will be able to marry her. And Biko, I still don't know, since at the moment Goku is not involved in Azazel and Sirzechs Gremory's plan, said Valentina. Wait, I included the Mao Lucifer, said Kuroka, looking at Valentina, who nodded. Yes, Valentina replied. Apparently Azazel has been meeting with several leaders of different pantheons to form the alliance. But he still needs that push to be able to form the alliance. Valencia let out another sigh, and this time looked seriously at the group. Therefore what Gabriel is doing is just what Azazel needed to form the pact between the biblical factions once and for all. Everyone's eyes widened in surprise at what was about to happen soon. I see that Gabriel will be the bridge between the biblical factions, so that they can achieve their alliance, Artur said with a hand on his chin. That means that seeing that an alliance that was in a completely neutral state after the Great Faction War, in addition to the civil war that the demons suffered, means that they are willing to form the alliance. It's true that even though it seems so simple, it's not entirely so. Valentina frowned. There's something else if the original plan doesn't work. But I don't like that idea very much. And what would that be, Naya? Kuroka asked. Saya maintenance arranged between his son and the heiress of the Gremory clan. Apparently both agreed to reach the peace treaty using his son and sister so that the factions finally leave their differences aside. Issei, Naya? But he would never be willing to marry with anyone. He doesn't even care about being with a girl, Naya, Kuroka said somewhat angrily. Believe me, Kuroka, I don't like this either. Valentina looked at the Nikomata, but we both know that Issei would do everything possible, even get married, to avoid future conflicts between his factions.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.